All right, welcome in everybody here on the East Coast and Northeast. Will, even though I consider Maryland a Southern state, when I was in the South, I said we're a Southern state, but a lot of people label us up in the Northeast. I know you're in the Northeast yourself. Everything good weather-wise for you guys up there?
It's cold. It's cold. I can only think about a nice day in June with a cold beer in my hand where it stays sunny until like 8 o'clock and you got baseball on and it's you can be in shorts and a t-shirt because it is freezing here. I know some parts of the East Coast it's minus 12 this week. And I know our buddy Todd Wishnev is braving the cold as well, but we'll get through it. We get through it every winter. We'll get through it. How's it going, man?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for getting on. Yeah, I tweeted something baseball weather with a bunch of greater signs football weather. So I'm right there with you. Being an August baby, it's like that's my dream there. But yeah, before we get into it, if you want to promote obviously what you do, where everybody can find you, your podcast, you do some great stuff. So just let everybody know.
Yeah, podcast Should Have Bet More, wherever you get your podcasts. 3 words, Should Have Bet More. And then Fox Sports, I write, VSiN at Twitter at Not The Will Hill. So I'm around. You can find me.
Awesome. So I don't know if you want to break down the UEFA Champions League games or we should just start getting into the Super Bowl. I mean, wherever you want to go, that's where we'll start. So how about the Super Bowl?
Super Bowl works for me. Boy, you start to, when you're in the content business, I've been doing it on my podcast where I try to pace myself. You don't want to sit here and do, just thinking it through 7 shows between the time the conference championships end and the start of the Super Bowl. You don't want to do all 7 shows, 40-minute shows on the Super Bowl. It just gets tedious. Listeners get bored. I get bored with it. So I try to pace myself with it, but starting to, get somewhat closer here. It's going to be weird this weekend to not have any football, but I like Seattle. I'm still skeptical of the road New England has taken to get here. I feels like they have been fortunate, even though I know their fans don't want to hear that. And you have to apologize for winning. They're in the Super Bowl, which is amazing here a couple years after Belichick has left. Brady's moved on, and they're right back in there. But I felt this all year, and I've talked about it on my podcast and some of the shows. I've just felt all year the NFC is a little bit stronger. People of a certain age will remember the 90s where whether it was the 49ers or the Cowboys or the Packers, it was just a league, a Super Bowl that was dominated by the NFC. I don't think it'll be that pronounced this year. I think we'll get a competitive game. And for the most part, last 20-something years, the games have been mostly competitive. I know last year was a blowout. Chiefs-Bucks was a blowout. You get a couple here and there. Broncos-Seahawks was a blowout. But for the most part, these games are competitive now. I'm thinking Seattle by like 10, 27, 17, something like that. I think the best bet of all of these, when you have Seattle as a 4.5 point favorite, and they're minus 200, minus 220 on money line, whatever it is, to me, Darnold at plus 130 to win the MVP is the best bet. There's value there. Instead of laying the $2, you're getting a plus 130, and the media loves this guy. He's good with the media. Seems like a good guy. The narrative is there where, high pick, bounced around the league, chewed up and spit out. Even by the Vikings, who were 14-3, said, you know what, thank you for your service. We'll see you later. The media loves this guy. The narrative is there. The one guy you worry about stealing it from, well, Smith-Njigba's a star. He could have a big game. If Smith-Njigba has a big game, Darnold has a big game. So I like Seattle. I think Darnold at plus 130, there is some value there in terms of the MVP.
Yeah, I'm with you on that because we don't think Kenneth Walker is going to have a big game given the New England run defense there. The only thing that I could see is a low-scoring, ugly game where maybe Iwamori or someone for Seattle on defense makes a big play. So maybe a little sprinkle on a Seattle defensive player for an MVP, or I guess maybe the same thing for New England. If they're going to win the game, you got to think they're going to stop that offense. So any kind of long shots in that area that you might think might be worth a flyer?
You brought up the guy, Iwamori, just from a talent standpoint, a talent play. I think he's in that 75, 80 to 1 range. That's not terrible. I mean, I'd like to be getting a little more. I'd like to be getting triple digits. Of course, we'd always like to be getting a little more. It's hard for a defensive player to win it, but it's not impossible. We saw it with Dexter Jackson in the Raiders-Bucks Super Bowl all those years ago. Larry Brown won it. The last time Seattle, the only time they won the Super Bowl against Denver, they had a defensive player win it, Malcolm Smith, who I think was a linebacker. So it's possible. And Iwamori, I don't think, and we'll find out a week from now, we'll find out if he won Rookie of the Year. I think he's probably going to finish second, but he's a monster player. He's a superstar, a future superstar. He's really good right now. What would he have to do? You probably have to score on defense. You probably have to, I don't know, could you win with like 2 interceptions? Is that enough? Unless you score on defense, you're probably not in the conversation. But hey, you score on defense and you recover a fumble, something like that, and it's a 13-10 type of game, he could certainly be in the mix. So I don't mind that Iwamori look. I think that's one I've heard before from other people that are sharp, and I do think there is some potential value there.
So obviously, we know the Super Bowl is kind of all about the prop bets. We have casual bettors. That'll be betting everything from the color of the Gatorade. I mean, all that stuff's fun, but not
Sure.
really lucrative betting. What would be your best prop bet strategy, and what's the worst Super Bowl prop bet that you ever made? Where you're like, "Hey, I can't believe I made this," whether it hit or not.
I would say just from the start here, just a good general rule of thumb. Be careful of anything that doesn't have a no. Be careful of those one-way markets. If you can only bet yes on something and there's no offered, chances are they're probably not giving you a fair price. Now, again, if you want to throw $5 on 5 or 10 different things and have some fun, it's the Super Bowl. I understand that it's recreation, but if you really want to win, if you're serious about winning, just be careful with the stuff that's one-way markets, needle in a haystack bets. Those are tough Those are tough to win. There's a lot of hold on those markets. So that's when I would look at. If you're going to get involved in the novelty props and these books, I think for the most part, with how much information is out there on Twitter and how much leaks now, these books have gotten pretty careful about what they post, the limits for what they post. But I would say don't bet anything. Don't bet anything where you feel like you're going to need to hire a lawyer if you lose. What are some of the obscure ones where there's some gray area? Where I seen the market, will there be a player that cries during the national anthem? If you think, oh, that guy in the background, he's kind of touching his eyes, he might be crying, I won, but they counted as a loss. Or, the color of the Gatorade, there actually can be some wiggle room with that. Was it yellow? Was it yellowish green? Was it blue? All of these different things. If you're betting that much money where you're going to be really mad and feel like you got ripped off if you lose, they don't grade it properly, just maybe stay away from stuff where there's gray area, where there's wiggle room in terms of how they grade it. But again, I go back to, it's the Super Bowl. If you want to have fun with some stuff, have fun with it. But again, don't feel like you bet anything where, man, if I lose this, I don't want to get screwed over. I'm going to have to, send emails and basically hire an attorney to get this fixed. Be careful about what you bet.
Yeah. I once bet the Alicia Keys singing the national anthem in the Ravens 49ers game, and I took the under because they set it extremely high, and she added a verse in there, and it then went over. And I was like, hey, you can't really do that. It should be the actual.
That's a great example.
Yes, exactly.
That's a great example. Some books will count it as soon as she finishes the anthem, like the Brave, and then boom, it's over. Some people will say, well, no, the continuation counts, almost like in basketball, you get continuation. So again, what's the saying? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. When you're betting on this stuff, you know what? It's hard to argue too much because you can interpret that one of two. You can interpret it either way. If you bet the over, you can say, well, she didn't finish. She kept singing. You can make a case for that. If you bet the under, you're obviously saying the opposite. So if you're betting this stuff, just know what you're getting involved with. Same thing with like first halftime song. What will be the first song sung at halftime? There can actually be controversy with that because a lot of times they'll play the beat of a different song, but the singer won't actually sing it, and they grade it like what's the first lyric, and there can be some gray area with that. So again, have fun with this stuff, but be careful and don't lose your mind if you you get a bad beat based on how it's interpreted in terms of these books grading it.
Right. And before we shift over to college basketball and baseball, I will say the worst player prop bet that I ever made myself was Virgil Green, the backup tight end for the Broncos the year they played the Panthers, the former Nevada Wolfpack. I had over catches for him, and I was trying to be smart and outsmart people. And I think he had one catch that got called back and then never saw the ball again. So I lost on Virgil Green catches. Yeah. So I also had Carolina to win that game, so I lost both bets there. So
I had Eagles second half money line last year, and I was getting like plus 250. And it was just the Eagles ran away. They were going to win the second half. And if you remember, they put in who's the backup? It was Pickett. And then the Chiefs got a garbage touchdown, another garbage touchdown, and I somehow lost. That was a tough one. That was a really bad one.
Yeah. Well, we'll shift over to college basketball. Obviously, it's that time coming here where we're right around the corner from March Madness, really ensconced in conference play here. And certainly we have a couple big surprises in the Miami of Ohio, the Fighting Wally Zerbiaks, the Red Hawks there, just again undefeated. I don't know how they're doing it. And the Arizona Wildcats with a great win against BYU. Obviously, they're the two big surprises, but any other team, maybe, Robbie Avila and the Billikens, that are huge surprises, whether it's positively or the most disappointing team for you that, so far this part of the college basketball season.
You hit a good one. St. Louis is a good one. St. Louis is a team that I wouldn't be shocked if you look up in the middle of March or later in March and they're in the Sweet 16. I wonder from a big picture perspective. I was just talking about this on my podcast. 2 years ago, we didn't get many upsets. We got Yale to beat Auburn, and we got Oakland over Kentucky. Last year, we basically got nothing. I wonder if that's going to start to be a trend with NIL and the gap between the haves and the have-nots. I worry that's going to start to widen. You look at the top 10 teams, there's a bunch of teams with no losses or one loss. There's just a big gap between the not even the top and the bottom, but the elite teams, the top 3 or 4 seeds, and then the middle of the bracket, so to speak. So I wonder if upsets are going to be at a premium and hard to find once March comes around. Another team, I don't know that they're a surprise, but I think could be dangerous come tournament time. I really like Seton Hall. I think they play physical. Watch them against UConn. They were just buckets are tough to come by. Now they can struggle on offense, but they're physical. They're tough. I think, the coach has experience in the tournament, experience pulling upset Shaheen Holloway. I think they could be a tough out, especially if they get a tournament crew that swallows the whistle, lets them play, which can happen sometimes in the tournament. They let a little more physicality go. Seton Hall's a very rugged team, so maybe not like a huge surprise, but I do think Seton Hall could be a little bit of a sleeper here come tournament time.
Yeah, and you brought up a great point in March, like the actual NCAA tournament. I think there could be some value now in the conference tournaments, given the fact that we might not have a ton of upsets in March Madness. Is there a team that maybe you think, hey, now I'll start betting them because they could make a run in the conference tournament, whether they're either underachieving or overachieving? Maybe like, how would you go about betting maybe the smaller conference tournaments? Like any strategy kind of from here on out?
Yeah, and it's funny. I mentioned lack of upsets in March Madness the last couple years. If you remember last year in the conference tournaments, it was pretty much all chalk too. There were very few upsets in the conference tournaments last year, which is a shame because you can get some real long shots, in these conference tournaments. In terms of the value, I know I had Queens last year, and they were, I think, 50-1, and they were up 10 in the semifinals with like 5 or 6 minutes to go, but they blew the lead, didn't make the finals. I would have at least been able to hedge in the finals. That's one, not that I'm still bitter about it a year later. A team I like that's kind of flying under the radar too, so similar to Seton Hall. I think Texas is a good team, could be a good little sleeper here. I don't know that and again, it's hard in these monster conferences to make a run because you got to go through so many games, but to me, they've been impressive at times. And the coach called them out, I think it was last week, for fouling too much, but they get to the line. They've got some traits you like as a team. I think Texas is a team, not like a Final Four team, but could they get in, pull off a couple upsets and be like a surprise Sweet 16 team if the bracket breaks right? I think Texas could have some value.
It'll be very, very interesting to see the Mid-American Conference, the MAC tournament, because obviously if Miami does not win that tournament, do they get 2 bids? I mean, does a team like an Akron upset them? I mean, because you got quality teams in Kent State, Miami of Ohio there. So right. I think that'll be the most interesting tournament, like you said, especially with the lack of upsets that there's been. It's like, hey, can this be a 2-bid league? I think would be very interesting.
I think they would probably, with their out of conference, they would probably have to be undefeated going into the conference tournament. And then, boy, that would be really cruel if they lost in a conference final as an undefeated team. I think they'd have to put them in. But like the numbers, I know they're ranked, but a lot of the metrics don't like them. But that would be, even though I think there's a little bit of fool's gold with them, that would be pretty cruel to win all of those games, go to the conference final, undefeated, like lose that. I know we're painting like an exact scenario, but that would be interesting and a sweat for the committee to decide what they do. I think they would put them in. I think if you get to the conference tournament undefeated, even if you lost the game, I think you got to put them in despite the non-conference. Would you agree with that or no?
Yeah, I think it was GW with the Pops Mensa Bonset team. Now I know the Atlantic 10 is a little bit more of a power conference than the MAC, but I think they were 30-1 or something like that and ended up getting a 9 or 10 seed. So they still got in. I think it all depends on the way the bubble goes and, what the committee tells us. And I mean, we saw the SEC get 13 teams and teams with 13 and 14 losses. I don't think that that's going to be the case in the power conferences. So I do think a little guy like that can sneak in. I hope they do. I mean, if they go undefeated and lose in conference tournaments, a close game, like I don't see how you could leave them out given the backlash that they could get, but the committee doesn't care about that stuff. So, we'll see.
All true.
But yeah, I know you busy guy, so let's just shift over to baseball here. Being in Baltimore, obviously my beloved Baltimore Orioles, they won the World Series when I was 2 months old in October of 1983. I was born in August of 83, so technically seen it in my lifetime. They are plus 1,100 on DraftKings to win the American League. Any steam from you on the Orioles? Do you think that's a good value bet, or who would you take kind of out in the American League if you had to make one bet to win the league?
11-1 is not bad to win the American League. I talked about it on my podcast. I like the Orioles 5-1 to win the AL East. I don't trust the Yankees. I'm a Yankee fan. They have not improved that roster at all. Bringing back Cody Bellinger, congratulations. I know you'll get Cole back, but the bullpen, there's questions. Judge can always miss a few weeks. And then what's that team look like? They're built on pitching, but starting pitching can get hurt. I think the Yankees are a flawed favorite. I'm skeptical, even though the Blue Jays, obviously, a tremendous year, and I still can't believe how great that Game 7 of the World Series was. Who knows if they can duplicate it? I think there's value in Baltimore, and you know this following them. They had so many pitching injuries last year. You figure they'll be healthier in the staff. They'll get Bradish back. We'll see if Rogers can duplicate that, even if he gives them 75, 80% of that. That's something, and you get some of these other guys back, and you're in business. And look, development is not always linear. I thought a lot of those position players regressed, or a few of them. It wasn't that long ago, 2 years ago, the Judge Soto team, which was a really good Yankee team when you had Judge and Soto, the Orioles took them to the wire. That was a nip and tuck race all summer, back and forth. Yankees eventually pulled away, but that was a really good Oriole team. Since then, they lost to the Royals in the wild card round, and then they had a bad year last year. I think they can get back on track. Some of those young guys, all right, they regressed last year, but they could certainly bounce back. The Rushmans and the Hendersons of the world. Holiday, a year older. You throw in Alonso. To me, that could be a monster lineup. I don't love the pitching, but the pitching, like I said, could be a little bit healthier. I don't think anyone's going to win with how good and how deep that division is. I don't think anyone wins 100 games. So could you win that division with 93, 94 wins, everyone beating each other up? I think you could. So I like Baltimore. You get that 5-1 at DraftKings to win the AL East. I think that's a good bet.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the Kansas City. We scored one run in 18 innings, and that the pitching was not the problem in that series. It was, it was tough. And adding Taylor Ward into that lineup too, there were only four outfielders that had 30 and 100. It was Aaron Judge, Soto, Taylor Ward, and Riley Green. So don't sleep on him either for the Orioles well. But as we know, baseball is every day, so betting strategies can be a little bit different. What do you think is like for you, if it's not just betting a futures bet or whatever? How do you go about betting baseball like successfully to make money? What advice would you give to people, on the easiest, maybe the best way to do it?
There's so many markets now. If you try to attack everything, it's going to be hard. I would say focus on a few that are a little off the radar. One market I really like is like pitchers hits allowed, where find out who gets the rope, especially early in the season. These guys aren't going to have a lot of rope once the season comes around in late March here. You're going to see a lot of 80 pitches, 5 innings. Guys that their pitch count gets up there, they have good stuff. I think back to like Shane Smith last year for the White Sox. Good stuff. He could walk a few guys. He didn't get a lot of rope. That mix of guys that are lined around 4.5, 5.5 hits allowed, where they have good stuff. They can walk people. They don't get their pitch count. They don't pitch deep into the games. Focusing on those niche markets, I think, is a good one to hone in on, just because if you try to focus on everything, it's going to be hard to what's the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. So I think if you just focus on a few markets you like and really study them, who goes deep into games, things like that, you'll become as good as the books or better than the books, because the books have to hang numbers on all this stuff. And if you really specialize, I think that's the key word. If you really specialize on a few markets and study it, even if you're not making bets, or even if you're just betting a couple bucks just to see how you're doing, to track your results, I think you can get really good at it quicker than you might think. Another one too I like to study: who gets pinch hit for? Who are the platoon guys? I think back to Jahmai Jones of the Tigers, only plays against lefties. And when the lefty comes out, he usually comes out. So his under hits sometimes would be like plus 160, plus 170. And you have some box scores where he gets one at bat, he gets out. His second at bat, he gets walked. And by his third at bat, there's a righty and he gets pinch hit for it. So you basically have to survive one at bat, and you're getting like a plus 160. So there was a guy, Hernandez, on the Marlins that only plays against lefties. And he comes out once righties come in. So if you can focus on those guys that are specialists that only play against lefties, that platoon, I think you can find some good numbers on the under hits, which is kind of a niche market.
Yeah, and I mean, if we think about it, I mean, even the best baseball players only get hits 3 out of every 10 times. So there's 7 times where they're not getting a hit. So I mean, you look at the value that you're getting there. To touch on your point, I actually had relayed to a pitcher. I found a pitcher, Patrick Corbin, 2 years ago. I called it Patrick Corbin Day. Every time he pitched, I bet the opposing team's run total over, because he would go 4 innings and then the Nats bullpen was terrible. So you can find a horse like that, like you said, throughout the year, that if you hitch your wagon to, you'll win probably 70-80% of the time here. But I know you got to get rolling soon, but best over under, I guess, win total for a team or two that you probably either would have money on or are going to bet.
I'll give you a weird one. I like the White Sox over 65.5. I thought they did well in the Garrett Crochet trade. When you're that bad for that long, you start to pile up the pieces, draft picks, prospects. They were much better than the year before. I think they got to 60 wins. Montgomery, Teal, they've got some guys in the minors coming. Now, you always wonder with these teams, are they really trying to win? Or are they going to try to manipulate the service time, things like that? But I think the White Sox in a division that's not great, and who knows, maybe the Tigers trade Schoolboy and it gets even worse. Twins, kind of a weird team. Royals are good. They're not great. Same thing with Cleveland. They're due for some aggression. I think the White Sox could find their way to like 70 wins. I think there's a lot of young talent there, and they were actually pretty feisty at some points, especially later in the season. So I think the White Sox are a little undervalued there at 65.5.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that division there. I mean, why can't they contend for it? Now, the only thing with that division is in order to make the playoffs, obviously, it's probably a one-person league. But yeah, I definitely think it's 100% possibility that Scooble gets traded, and then Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez for the Twins are probably almost certainly gone once they realize that that's what they should do. So really, really like that one. And I mean, I will obviously be betting the Orioles over under win total. And maybe I haven't seen what the Blue Jays is, but you're right. Maybe take a little under on that one as well. And, the Angels are a team that I always fade. So I'm curious to see what their number will be. But, they're a team that no matter how much hype they get, I always kind of take their under, and they kind of overachieved last year, but I'm not high on them at all. So do you think there's any team that can contend with the Dodgers in the NL? Is it worth putting any money on any team?
Not in the regular season, even though Dave Roberts admitted as much. We kind of load managed, we paced ourselves, but they're going to get their wins. They're going to win the division. I thought the Padres had their chances last year to win the division, couldn't pull it off. And you can't just hand them the pennant when it comes to the playoffs because it's such a small sample size. You're playing a best 2 out of 3, then a best 3 out of 5, and a best 4 out of 7. So anyone can get picked off. Do the Mets have enough pitching? I like their lineup. I'm not sure. I mean, the Dodgers, they'll probably find their way in the World Series, but with just the random nature of baseball and the small sample size that is the playoffs, it's not a foregone conclusion. Like when you get a dominant NBA team, barring injury, they're probably going to be in the finals. I think it's less so for a team like the Dodgers.
Yeah, as a person who was on the Phillies in that series, if a relief pitcher just throws to first base and gets you out, the Dodgers are probably not even in the World Series there. So this whole lack of parity thing, I mean, we're only a couple of years away from the Rangers and Diamondbacks being in the World Series, and we were a bad throw to home plate away from the Dodgers not even being in the World Series. So you're exactly right there. I think regular season is maybe you could fade them certain series, but yeah, I mean, I wouldn't bet on anyone else until the playoffs come, and then you got to look at certain numbers that you're going to get, man. So really appreciate the time. I know you're a busy guy. Obviously appreciate touching base on some other sports. We'll have to have you on again closer to kind of baseball season, and then maybe hit up the transfer portal in college football and give some, early Heisman bets here next time that we're on, man. But I appreciate the time.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. It was fun. Enjoyed it. So let me know. Happy to come on again.
Absolutely. Take care. See you. Cool. Thanks.